Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshumilitanjena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Pravajantam Anupeta Apeta Kritam Vapayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tan Maitaya Tarvo Binedus Tam Savaputam Hridaya Munimanatosme Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devyam Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudирayet Bhaktya Vihina Parada Lakshai Kiptashtakamari Tarangamadye Kripa Maitam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam Tave Vasmi Najivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayanam Charanandike Pancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhuvevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Okay, so we are going to begin by offering our most humble, grateful obeisance unto the lotus feet of our beloved Gurus, unto Sri Guru Pada Padmanitya Bhavishta Om Vishnu Pada Sta Tarsat Sri Srimad Abhaya Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada and Sri Guru Pada Padmanitya Bhavishta Om Vishnu Pada Sta Tarsat Sri Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj unto our exalted Rupanuguru Varga, to all the assembled Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis, Joy, Joy. So, continuing with the Sri Bhajan Rahasya of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but we begin always by offering our obeisance on the lotus feet of our beloved Gurus, unto our beloved Srila Prabhupada, our beloved Srila Gurudev, right? Always, always. And today is the disappearance day of Sri Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, the godbrother of our Srila Prabhupada, sort of. Was he direct disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada? I don't think so. Was he? Yeah. Sure? I know he's under his direction. I thought he came earlier, huh? Yeah.
I was reading about him recently. His initiated name was Swatipadananda.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, he was very famous, and he was around a long time. And I know a lot of devotees that had interactions with him. He was quite a unique personality, always absorbed in chanting the holy name everywhere, even to the extent that Saraswati Prabhupada, who was devoted singularly to, not singularly, but I mean, his whole purpose for appearing was to spread the message of Mahaprabhu. Bhaktivinoda Thakur prayed for that. Please send a ray of Vishnu to help me put into form this great preaching mission. Bhaktivinoda Thakur established the foundation by reviving all of the literatures of the Goswamis, commenting on them, writing books to make it understandable in a modern cultural sense, books like Chaitanya Shikshamrita, Jaiva Dharma, Krishna Samhita, others. But his life was also absorbed in a regular job. He was a magistrate, and he was maintaining his family, and his role was a little different. I mean, he was showing that one can live in a grihastha lifestyle within society and still execute bhakti on a very high level, right? I mean, the highest level. But he wanted then the next step, and so he prayed, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada came, and he put the preaching mission into form. The Gaudiya Mat became the template for the modern preaching mission of Mahaprabhu. Evangelical, which had not really had happened since the time of Mahaprabhu. Certainly many of Mahaprabhu's associates had evangelical natures, activities. Nityananda roaming everywhere, and so many others as well. But since that time, not so much. Narottam, Srinivas, Shamananda, they did. But then slowly, that was not to be seen. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada was first and foremost preacher. And Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, even though he was highly regarded by everybody, sometimes Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada would criticize him, that he's just pulling rope. Now, he was a great devotee, he was a Mahabhagavat, but just to show how important it was, how much he felt that this preaching mission had to be expanded, he would say things like that. Although our Srila Prabhupada has said there are two kinds of Mahabhagavats, Bhajananandi and Goshanandi. Some people have that natural inclination. However, even as a Bhajananandi, as Haridas Thakur was also Bhajananandi, both also preached. And he also preached, and he interacted with many of my godbrothers, and they have recounted times when, they were guided and inspired with him. And I heard another thing, that he used to have these stickers. He used to get these stickers, and he'd go around and just put them on walls, the Maha Mantra, right? And he was quite delightful, always happy, always chanting. And when my Guru Maharaj took sannyas at Keshavji Gaudiya Math in Mathura, Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj was there, and he was leading the kirtan, and Srila Prabhupada, the ceremony lasted like 6 or 8 hours. And Srila Prabhupada said, please just chant Hare Krishna the whole time. Right? Sometimes we'll do other bhajans, other kinds of things, but he wanted just Hare Krishna the entire time, which he did. 6 or 8 hours continually singing happily. Because persons on that level, they're directly connected, interacting in love with Radha and Krishna. They're serving Radha and Krishna. They're present. And we've been hearing in this second chapter the anarthas which are preventing us from accessing and tasting the holy name for what it is. And now the last 3 days we've been hearing about the identity, the Sarupa Bhagavan, in relation to his name. That we sometimes just take the holy name as a ritual, a practice that we have to do. But what we need to do is understand the nature of the absolute truth and cultivate a relationship with that absolute truth. And that relationship is cultivated through this chanting, serious chanting. We already heard the 10 offenses and how they're all obstacles. They immerse us in aparad. And we've been hearing about the necessity to elevate ourselves beyond that, and the steps that we've been given by Bhaktivinoda Thakur is to understand the genuine nature of Bhagavan and the non-difference between himself and his holy name. So yesterday and the day before we heard the first 2 verses of the Catuh Sloki of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam, as originally spoken by the Lord himself to Lord Brahma, was 4 verses only. But everything is contained within them. And Lord Brahma, after the Lord revealed himself to him in meditation, granted him the power to perform his service of creation, then revealed these 4 verses to him. And we've done the first 2, and now we go to verse 3. Bhaktivinoda Thakur introduces it by saying, knowledge of the intrinsic natures of Jiva Shakti and Maya Shakti is found in Srimad Bhagavatam. Oh wait, did I read that one? No, 2.9.34. Right. Okay. Rite ritam yat patiyeta, na pritiyeta chatmani, tad vidyad atmano mayam, yatabhasho jatatamaha. The supreme absolute truth, Paramatattva, or Sarup Tattva, is the only real truth. One should understand that's the only real truth. We're absorbed in so many other temporary truths that we hold so dear to us. all of them related to our false ego and our false sense of purpose in this world, right? All these temporary identities, temporary duties, temporary objectives. But the Lord himself is saying the supreme absolute truth is the only real truth. One should understand that which is seen to be separate from this truth or not existing within it to be the product of the supreme absolute truth's illusory energy, Maya. The following example demonstrates this. Paramatattva can be compared to the sun, which is an object consisting of light. The sun is experienced in two other forms, namely its reflection and darkness. Similarly, in regards to the absolute truth, reflection pertains to the living entities, Jiva Shakti, and darkness to the material world, Maya Shakti. Now, I was reading Srila Prabhupada's translations because I had them on my other phone, but I didn't bring it, so I can't read them. And this is too small to read in this book. But they're very helpful. Srila Prabhupada was empowered by Lord Krishna, just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, to present things in a way that perhaps very accessible to Western mind, and especially those of us who are beginning in our attempt to approach and grasp this philosophy. He put it very directly, but also very simply. So, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj comments on this verse. He says, although the Jiva and Maya are both dependent on Bhagavan, a person does not experience them while he is directly experiencing Bhagavan. And while having experience of the Jiva and Maya, one will not have experience of Bhagavan. Now, I'm going to get back to that in a bit. The intrinsic nature of the Supreme Absolute Truth was ascertained in the previous text. The Jiva and Maya are separate from Paramatattva. When a Jiva can realize Paramatattva, it is known as realized knowledge, Vigyan. This text 29 elaborates upon Maya Tattva. Paramatattva is the only real truth, and that which is experienced outside Paramatattva and not within it is the product of the illusory energy of the absolute truth. An example of this is seen in the sun, its reflection and darkness. A semblance of the sun is the reflection of the sun on water or on other things at dawn. This semblance does not exist within the sun. Similarly, Maya is only perceived when the creative energy of Bhagavan is manifest, and its existence is destroyed at the time of annihilation, Mahapralaya. That means the end of Lord Brahma's life. Sometimes it means the end of his day also, but mostly the end of his life, because that's when everything is sucked up. Without Bhagavan, Maya is not manifest. Where there is light, there can be no darkness. But darkness is also perceived through the eyes. In the same way, Maya cannot be perceived on its own without the help of Bhagavan. The transcendental world, Chit Jagat, is herein compared with the rays of the sun, Bhagavan. Using the same analogy, the jivas are compared to the reflection of Bhagavan, and the material world, Maya Jagat, is compared with darkness. The material realm is very far from Bhagavan, the transcendental truth, Chit Tattva. There are two kinds of relationship between Paramatattva and Maya Tattva. That which is experienced as separate from the absolute truth is Maya, and that which is very far from the absolute truth and in ignorance of it is also Maya. In this way, by carefully explaining the inherent nature of himself, the Jiva and Maya, Sri Bhagavan explained Sambandha Tattva to Brahma. So it's a bit technical, right? Sometimes when we hear these very concise philosophical elaborations, our minds kind of drift, right? What the heck is he saying? Even while reading it, I have to admit, what am I reading? What am I, can I explain this in any way? This is so technical and deep. But let's start off with that first paragraph. Although the Jiva and Maya are both dependent on Bhagavan, a person does not experience them while he is directly experiencing Bhagavan. And while having experience of the Jiva and Maya, one will not have experience of Bhagavan. Okay. So this section is, again, all about Sambandha Tattva, right? And so we know also that there's no truth independent of the Supreme Lord. Everything is his energy, right? Of course, we are attempting to enter into the realm of the spiritual world, the Chit Jagat, right? That transcendental realm. But at present, we are immersed and covered in the material realm, right? And nevertheless, there is a relationship between Maya and the Lord, Maya and Jiva, Maya and Maya, Jiva and Jiva, right? The relationship is there, but what he's talking about here is, because he says they're both dependent on Bhagavan, but he says a person doesn't experience them while he's directly experiencing Bhagavan, the Jiva and Maya. What he means by that is that one is not experiencing the illusory nature of the Jiva and Maya, right? Because when one is absorbed in Bhagavan, what is Maya? Maya is just his own energy. One will see it for what it is. It's like Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings that, "Oh my Lord, now that I have come to your feet, I've realized you, now my house is transformed. It's become like Kunta. I see everything in relationship to you. My so-called family is not my family, they're your servants. My maintaining them is actually service to you." Right? Everything then transforms into its relationship with Bhagavan. So the illusory nature of Jiva and Maya is not experienced when one is seeing Bhagavan. But we have many descriptions, especially read Chaitanya Bhagavat, descriptions of people given realization of Bhagavan. They don't see Krishna alone, or even Radha and Krishna alone. They're given darshan of Radha, Krishna, their associates, all of Vrindavan, right? But Krishna is never alone. Krishna includes his vibhutis, his opulences, right? But primarily what he's saying here is that we have to understand Paratattva, or Paramatattva, and then everything else takes on real meaning. And the illusory nature of this material world is removed, right? A pure devotee sees everything in relationship to Krishna. There's so many examples. One time, Srila Prabhupada was taking a morning walk with his devotees, and they're walking in a suburb, right? And somebody had their faucet on. And this is early in the morning, right? So this thing's been going on all night. It's running all over the lawn, down the sidewalk, into the street, right? And the devotee's just walking by. Srila Prabhupada stops, walks up to the side of the house, turns it off, and then comes back. And we're going to think, why would he do that? It's not our house, not our faucet. What do we care? Not our bill. But he said, this is Krishna's energy. We should not waste it, right? Very different kind of perception. Very different perception. Everything in relationship to Krishna. And he says, the Jiva and Maya are separate from Paramatattva. They're separate in one sense, but in another sense, Mahaprabhu came to teach Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. And that has been discussed somewhat in the past, will be more here. If we had time and read Srila Prabhupada's purports in these 4 verses. They're very extensive, 4 or 5 pages for each of these verses. And the intrinsic relationship, although in one sense they're separate. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, aparayamitat. Anyway, he says in how does that go? Bhumirapona lovayu kamano buddha evacha. What is the rest? Bina prakriti ashtada. That, this material world, these are my separated energies. But he says, aside from them, aparayamitat sarvam. What is it? Yeah, thank you. God, the older I get, the more I forget. Prakriti vidi me padam. There's that superior energy of mine, right? And that's the jiva. So he's saying, this is my energy. This is also my energy. But in this case, Lord Krishna, or Lord Narayan in this case, is explaining to Lord Brahma that which you're going to be involved with, you're going to be creating jivas, you're going to be creating this material energy, you're going to become the master of the illusory world. But Lord Brahma has already prayed, please don't let me become illusioned by all this. Don't let me become prideful, thinking myself the doer and the controller, right, of all of this. So this is realized knowledge to know, on one hand, how they're separate and they have their own purpose, but ultimately, what's the real purpose of the material world? The real purpose is one purpose is the independent existence and playground of the neglectful living entities, but that playground is meant to actually reform and teach them that this is not where your real purpose, your real happiness will be experienced. See, that's all distraction and unfortunate, because no matter how much you can enjoy in any given life, you may become a demigod, you may even become a Lord Brahma, but ultimately you die. And everything that you had, everything you were attached to, you forgot. And then you go on to the next one. I told this story before of one of my god sisters. She and her husband became attached to Srila Gurudev, Srila Narayan Raj, and they were following very nicely. The husband died quite prematurely, many, 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 many years ago, right? My age. So back in, when they were in their late 40s maybe, or 50s. And this lady is nice devotee. And after that, some years later, she was talking with Srila Gurudev, and she said, I can't forget him. I'm so attached. And Srila Gurudev says, well, he's forgotten you. He's forgotten you completely. How many lifetimes have we had that we can't remember? And we don't even care. We've been fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, and we've been demigods, we've been powerful kings, we've been slaves, we've been everything imaginable. And we've had all kinds of relationships, some of them very dear, painful to give up. But we had to give them up. And all those people we're attached to, they don't remember us, we don't remember them. Right? And yet we're, again, in another life, tenaciously grasping on to these same kinds of attachments. Right? But he's saying that anything not in relationship to Krishna is illusory. Right? So the idea of jiva, our existence, the idea of this material world, if you can't connect it through sambandha with the Supreme Lord, it's illusory, it's temporary, it's untruth. Maya also means that which is not. Right? So that's a condensed. He says there are two kinds. He concluded by saying there's two kinds of relationship between Parama-tattva and Maya-tattva. That which is experienced as separate from the absolute truth is Maya. And that which is very far from the absolute truth and in ignorance of it is also Maya. So we're living here. Two kinds of people can be living here. One kind of person can see all this in relationship to Krishna. Oh, this is the place of Shri Radha Raman. This is the place of Lalita, Vishaka, their associates. Our gurus are here, right? This is all there since it's a place for sharing and spreading the message of Mahaprabhu. Someone else can see this in a completely different way, right? And this is, unfortunately, our tendency. This is a place of my enjoyment, my comfort, my happiness. And most of us were somewhere in between, right? We want to use it for service, but we're also using it and trying to get our own happiness out of it. A truly sincere devotee, though, will always try very hard to see everything in relationship to the Lord, which means in relationship to Sri Guru and the mission of Sri Guru, right? And anything that is favorable for that, in relationship to that is very good. That's in relationship to the Lord. Anything that's not, that's separate, it's Maya. There's no two ways around it. It's one or the other, right? It's one or the other. Two kinds of relationship between Parama Tattva and Maya Tattva. That which is experienced as separate from the absolute truth is Maya, and that which is very far from the absolute truth and in ignorance of it is also Maya. In this way, by carefully explaining the inherent nature of himself, the Jiva and Maya, Sri Bhagavan explained Sambandha Tattva to Brahma. Right? So, and we've also been reading, and that's why it's important to read and study this chapter from beginning to end, how our anarthas cover our sense of truth and delude us into thinking, oh, I am a great devotee, I am doing this, I am doing that. But actually, we're still pretty far away. On the one hand, we've come a long way to come to the point of bhakti, to come to the recognition, to be reading Bhagavatam, to be worshiping the deity, to live in a holy place. It's extraordinary. Brahmande Brahmite Kon Bhagyavana Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Beach. The living end has been wandering through so many species of life in every planet of the universe, up and down, since time without beginning. To come to appreciate bhakti, to come to this stage, very, very rare. But then, to understand the magnitude of making that jump from being introduced to the idea that I am an eternal servant, and then breaking free of these shackles of self-interest and illusion, right? Very difficult. Srila Gurudev has said you can spend, even, you think, oh, I'm a devotee, I'm doing pretty good. He said, this Kanishta stage, you can spend hundreds and hundreds of lifetimes in. Just going up a little bit, going down a little bit, and you're also very fragile and vulnerable because with the wrong kind of association, you can lose everything and go back again. Puna Mushtika Baba, again become a mouse, right? So it's fragile. Yeah? So text 30, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says the relationship between Krishna on one side and the living entity and the material world on the other is one of inconceivable difference and non-difference. Achintya Beda Beda. Nevertheless, Krishna is separately situated in his eternal Sarup. And this is very important. This is the last of the Catuh Slokis. He introduces the idea of Achintya Beda Beda, non-difference. At the same time, due to ignorance, laziness, whatever, don't cheaply equate whatever you want with the Lord and his purposes, right? So, yata mahanti bhutani, bhuteshu chashvacheshvanu, pavishtanya pavishtani, tata teshu nateshvaham. The five great elements of material creation enter into the bodies of all living entities, high and low, from the demigods to the subhuman species. But at the same time, these elements exist independently. Similarly, I have entered into all living entities as the supersoul. But at the same time, I am situated independently in my own swarup. And I appear to my surrendered devotees both internally and externally. Okay, so let's hear how Srila Narayan Maharaj explains this. All right. So you know what the 5 great elements of material creation are? We just said, Bhumir, Apo, Nalo, Vayu, Kamano, Buddha, Evacha. With this 5, but then there's also Ahankara. What is it? Ahankara, Itima, Me, Bina, Prakritinashtata. There's the earth, water, fire, air, sky, ether, whatever you want to call it, space. But then there's also subtle, the mind, the intelligence, and the false ego. All of these are material, right? And they exist in they have their independent existence, but they also come together to form the bodies that each individual soul inhabits. So they're separate, but also they're within everyone, right? From the topmost demigods to the lowest, gopa germ. Right? So Krishna's saying also, I am within every entity. I enter into every atom and into the heart of every living being. I'm everywhere. But at the same time, I have a separate existence, my independent Sarup in the spiritual realm. Right? And I'm also within everything by my separated energies, my Maya Shakti, my Sarup Shakti. I all pervade in 2 ways, personally and through my energies. So, Srila Narayan Maharaj explains, after describing his own Sarup, Sri Bhagavan says, I am situated inside and outside every living entity. That's not a small statement. Sometimes we just forget that, God's everywhere. He's watching us all the time. And to neglect that, to act duplicitously, there's no escape from that, right? There's a great song by an old country western legend. Sooner or later, God's going to cut you down. If you think you're getting away, you're not. You're not. But at the same time, he's not like just some vengeful smiter. Compassionate, loving, and he wants us to come to him, right? And he's creating all the conditions favorable to it. But if we don't adhere to what's favorable, then the other. You have to be purified on the anvil of ordeal, punishment, so that you recognize, oh my God, what am I doing? I can't. I remember one time, I was a kid, maybe 19, left college, studied a little Eastern philosophy, absorbed in the hippie life, not happy, right, ready for a change. And I had one of the worst jobs you could ever have in the world. It was working in the wintertime on the ice out on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, cutting holes in the ice and jumping into the water and raking clams and things like that for the winter. And one of the places we were supposed to rake the clams had gotten all blocked up with ice, and the gates that were supposed to open up and drain the water were blocked. So they gave me this big iron rod, kind of about the size of this dunda, and said, take this rod and chop through the ice and clear a path like an icebreaker, right? I said, what? So I went there, and there was a little hole, like a seal hole, and I jump in, and I'm up to water up to about here, right? And I'm chopping ice. And it's so cold. Sometimes the wind chill was like minus 40 sometimes. And I'm chopping, and as I chop in front, it's freezing behind me, right? And also all around me is ice all around me. So it's like I'm surrounded by a cone, and all I can see is a circle of sky. And I can still see it, It's completely brilliant blue sky with a little wispy cloud over right there. And I'm chopping and chopping, and I know it's fruitless. It's never going to come to that I'm going to get there. It's just, why do they have me do this? What am I doing? And if I slip, I had these waders on that come up to here, but if I slip, this ice cold water is going to go into the waders, fill me up. I'm not going to be able to get out. No one's going to hear me. No one even knows I'm here. I'm going to slip under the ice. I'm going to drown painfully. And maybe in April sometime, late April, they might find me when it all melts, right? If the crabs or whatever don't eat the whole thing first. And at that point, because I've been in this job all winter, this is now late March, and then I'm looking up at the sky, and I hold up my rod, like Moses on the mount, and I went, "Oh God!" I just called out, "God, God! Is this all there is to life? Is this all there is? Give me a sign, God!" And then a few days later, I got super sick, hitchhiked down to New York, and was in delirium for days. And then just a month or two later, my buddy, who comes up here time to time, Radharaman, he said, "Oh, I just went to this great temple, "Oh, well, let's go." We went, and then 4 weeks later, I was living in the temple, right? So that suffering was a impetus. For people that are really enjoying life, they just, keep on going. Why wouldn't you? It's very easy to get distracted by this world and the power, the glory, any of the opulences. What is it? Janmaishvaya Shuta Shribir Edamana Madak Puman. Queen Kunti says, those who are bewildered, too much attached because of high birth, by opulence and wealth, by beauty and great learning, very hard for them to come to your lotus feet. Very hard indeed. But she says, but those who can, the tvam akinchana gocharam, those who are greatly materially distressed. So this world, if you find yourself immersed in distress and anxiety and worry and bewilderment, it's a sign that Krishna is showing some favor. One of the verses that Srila Prabhupada often quoted was that after he had taken initiation from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, he read a verse where Lord is speaking to Yudhishthira, and, because the question is, well, the devotees of Lord Shiva, they're always doing really well. They get all kinds of things, and your devotees are always poor and scrabbling along. Who wants to be a devotee? If that's the case, why do you want to be one of them? I've told you the story. When I first saw devotees, I saw them all scrawny and just a utteriya and a little bed sheet on and begging for quarters. And I said, look at those guys. What a bunch of losers, Materially, devotees they could be perceived as losers, right? Well, what do you do? What do you eat? What do you enjoy? But Krishna is saying that as long as you're attracted to all of that, you don't get to taste the real joy, the real happiness of devotion. So the verse was, to Yudhishthira, those whom I especially favor, I take away everything. So that all they have left is to surrender unto me. And Srila Prabhupada said, when I heard that verse, I became so afraid. Because he wanted to make a lot of money, which he was destined to do, and support the movement in that way, right? His Guru Maharaj's movement. But he said, but Krishna had other plans for me, and he took everything away. And he laughed about it. And he said, but, back then I had a family. I had, 2 sons and a daughter. Now I have hundreds of sons and daughters. I have houses all over the world. I have so much more. Laughing. Of course, that's not the real thing. The real thing, of course, was his deep connection and his fulfillment in satisfying the mission of his Guru Maharaj. And so Lord Brahma is getting all these teachings because he's going to become the master of the universe. He's going to create the whole thing. And he's a great devotee. I mean, to become a Lord Brahma, there can only be one. In the entire trillions of years of the lifetime of Brahma, there's only one. And he's a great devotee. Right? But even that, Krishna will show you how insignificant that is even. Once when Lord Brahma got a little proud, right? And Krishna wanted to show him when when Lord Brahma went back to his planet, Satyalok, and went to his palace, he was checked at the door by his own guards. And he said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Who are you?" "I'm Brahma." Who? "No, Lord Brahma is already here." "What? What do you mean he's already here?" "I'm Brahma." No, you're not. You're not Brahma. And he got checked. And then he realized that, then he got in, and Krishna was there, and Krishna was sitting in front of unlimited numbers of Brahmas. And our Brahma has 4 heads. These Brahmas had 8 heads, 16 heads, 32 heads, 64 heads, 128 heads. So many heads. Huge Brahmas with universes so huge and so much more significant. Ours is the teeniest, most insignificant universe. And all of a sudden Brahma realized, oh, I thought I was so important. I thought I was so powerful. Now, even as a Brahma, I'm an insignificant Brahma. Right? And so we put so much stress. Srila Prabhupada says everything in this world we get so attached and proud about. And he recounted a story of himself on a train one time. And trains in India back in the day, that was the only means of travel anywhere, right? Everybody would take the train. And there was a man on the train, and he was standing, didn't have a seat, and at his feet was a big piece of wood, right? And the man was very judicious in guarding it, and at the same time very proud. Because there are a lot of places, back then, that's what you needed to cook, to heat bath water. It wasn't electricity, it wasn't all this stuff, You needed firewood. And it's very difficult to gather, Ladies would go out and walk miles and gather sticks and put them on their head. And somehow or other, this man had found a big chunk of wood. And he was so happy and proud that he's going to bring this back to his family. It would last him for days and days. And Srila Prabhupada says, it's just an ugly old piece of wood. It was half burnt on one side, but he was so proud of it. And he was standing there like this, my wood. And he said, just see, pride and material attachment and possession is so strong that this man was proud of an old piece of wood. Yeah? So whatever we have, we could become like that. And devotees, back in the day, we didn't own anything. But, we didn't even have our own clothes. But gradually, the movement became a little more opulent. And preachers thought, in order to preach effectively, we have to be like Prabhupada. But they would be like Prabhupada externally. Because Srila Prabhupada had disciples, so they would give him gifts. He had very nice cloth, which was important, He's the leader of an international institution. And he was wearing silk, which is perfectly okay. And gradually, devotees, pujaris, sannyasis began to wear silk, right? And that's a very subtle attachment. I remember I was a pujari and they gave me silk. And I thought, wow, this is really nice. I don't know if you've ever worn silk cloth before. It's pretty nice. It's clean, it's smooth, it's very comfortable. Then, if you want to impress people, then you don't want to look like a beggar, remember, with a bunch of losers, Srila Prabhupada was always having a watch. They gave him watches. And whenever he got a new watch, he'd just take the old one off and give it to somebody, he just accepted it. But then devotees thought, I should have a watch, especially preaching in India. That's where it started. We got to impress the big wallahs, the merchants and all. And so getting anything from the West in India was very difficult. So if you came in and had a nice watch, they'd be impressed with you. And so devotees started getting watches, right? Especially Rolexes, if you could get a Rolex. And then, wow. And a briefcase, and a tape recorder that you could play tapes and things like that. And gradually, when I first went to India, I had a bag this big with everything in it. But then, somehow or other, because I preached in Indians, I don't know how I got it, but I got a watch. Somehow or other, I ended up with a Rolex and a tape player. Did I have a brief? I think I had some kind of briefcase. And I had nice cloth. And when I came back to the West, I had all the signs of a great devotee. A watch, nice cloth, and a tape recorder. Janmai Shraya Shutashri beard, Edamani, become bewildered by these things. It's not what bhakti's all about. He's trying to explain to Lord Brahma, who's going to be the most opulent, the most powerful, the creator of everything, the Lord of the demigods. If it's not connected to me, it's just illusion. Don't forget that. So, our simple little life, don't become discouraged by simple, humble life. Rejoice in it. The simpler it is, the less you have to worry about, right? Less clothes, less possessions, no worries, right? No worries at all. Less to wash, less to maintain, Possessions are a headache. The richest people in the world are also always paranoid and fearful that someone will come to give them harm, to steal what they have, to take. They're all building big underground shelters, because they're afraid of the Armageddon that they're creating by their greed. So when it all comes to be, we'll be underneath the ground and we'll be safe. But you got to come out sometime. And sooner or later, God will cut you down, If you're acting inappropriately, you just can't get away. Can't get away. So I was going to do 2 verses, but we'll only do 1 verse today. It's kind of old-timey kind of class, Don't try to enjoy, It's not what it's all about. We need to know this Sambandha Tattva. This is the foundation of our culture and the purpose of our beliefs, our lives, right? You just can't live in a little cult world. You have to have strong philosophical foundation for the values and the morals and the behavior that we undertake. But also we have to know the reality of that too, right? All right, so we'll stop here. Offer grateful obeisance to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev, all of our Guru Varga, Srila Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, and all the Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis, Gaur Premanande, Hari Bol.